Hi all, this is Nitish Kumar, and today I'll be doing a comparative case study between Esports law and the Formula One law. So imagine two worlds, one a high-speed race where regulations dictate every move, and the other a fast-growing industry where rules are still being written. Today, we're comparing Esports law and the Formula One law to see what lessons Esports law can learn from one of the most structured sports league in the world. So, what is esports law? Esports law is a specified field that deals with the legal aspects of the competitive video gaming industries. So, it covers several areas like players and team agreements, intellectual properties, advising sponsorships, privacy, gambling regulations, and tournament rules. So, esports lawyers they help players and teams navigate the legal complexities of the industry and also sometimes advise on the broadcasting and streaming regulations and events. What is F1 law? F1 law operates under a well-defined regulation framework established by the Federation International Automobile, also called as FIA. F1 law consists of three major parts, like sporting regulations, technical regulations, and financial regulations. Unlike esports, where the organization create their own rules, F1 has a centralized governing body, which is the FIA, which enforces strict regulations across all teams and drivers. This structure has helped F1 become a globally recognized multi-billion-dollar industry with strong legal protection for its stakeholders. So why we compare esports and Formula One?
So the esports industry is experiencing rapid growth, but it faces a lot of major legal challenges due to its fragmented governance and inconsistent contracts. In contrast, Formula One has a long-standing legal framework that ensures fairness and financial stability and players' protection. By comparing these two industries, we can see how esports can improve players' contracts and employment rights, and some ways to strengthen intellectual property laws for the teams and the players, and also the benefits of an unified regulation systems for the competitive gaming. In this presentation, we'll analyze six key legal areas and identify actionable lessons esports can learn from F1's structured legal framework. Now, let's talk about the player contracts and the employment. One of the biggest legal differences between esports and Formula One. In esports, player contracts are often one-sided and heavily favor organizations. Many players are signed as independent contractors, not employees, meaning that they don't get the benefits such as like the healthcare, job security, or retirement plans. Some contracts also have strict buyout clauses, making it harder for the players to switch teams even. A great example for this is the Tufu versus Fuzzy clan case in 2019, where Tufu, a popular esports player, claimed that his contracts gave Fuzzy clan too much control over sponsorships and earnings. This case highlighted the lack of standard contracts and player protections in the esports industry. F1, on the other hand, has a much more structured system. F1 drivers sign multi-year contracts with the teams, and they're treated as employees with salaries, bonuses, and benefits. Contracts include performance clauses. For example, a driver may get paid more based on the races wins. And drivers also have the Grand Prix Drivers Association, also called as GPDA, which works to protect driver rights and negotiate fairness contracts, unlike esports, where teams have most of the power. F1 contracts are much more balanced and standardized. Now that we have covered player contracts, let's move on to another major legal issue: intellectual property and branding. One of the biggest legal battles in esports and Formula One is about who owns what, from game content to team logos and personal brandings. In esports, game publishers own everything: the game, the tournaments, the characters, and even the rules. This means teams and the players have limited control over the branding and content and sponsorships. For example, if a pro player streams a game and they don't fully own the content, it's still controlled by the publisher. Some players have even been banned or hit with the copyright strikes for using game content in the ways that the publisher didn't allow them. Whereas in Formula One has a more balanced systems, teams and drivers own the branding rights and they can even negotiate sponsorship deals independently. However, the FIA and Formula One management, also called as FOM, control broadcasting rights, meaning teams cannot just stream or post race footages without permission. Now let's talk about one of the biggest difference between esports and Formula One: who makes the rules and how they're enforced. In esports, there is no single governing body. Instead, each game publisher, whether it's Riot Games, Valve, or Activision, sets their own rules for tournaments, player behavior, and contracts. This means that the rules can vary widely between different esport titles. For example, League of Legends is heavily regulated by Riot Games, which has strict rules for its leagues. Meanwhile, CSGO and Dota 2 have open tournament structures where different organizations enforces different rules. The lack of consistency can create confusion and unfair treatment for players and teams. F1, on the other hand, has a clear and centralized governing body, also called as FIA. As we discussed previously, they control most of the rules in Formula One, mainly sporting regulations, technical regulations, and financial regulations. Because every F1 team and driver must follow the same rule book, there's more fairness and structure compared to esports. Now that we have discussed governance, let's move on to how disputes are handled in esports and Formula One. In esports, there's no standard system for handling disputes. If a player is banned, a team has a contract issue, or a tournament makes a controversial ruling. The resolution depends entirely on the game publisher or the tournament organizer. For example, in Tufu and Fezzi clan case, Tufu had to take his dispute to civil court because there was no esports specific attribution system. Similarly, if a player is banned from a tournament, there's often no appeal process, making decisions feel unfair. In Formula One, they have a clear appeals and attribution system run by the FIA International Court of Appeal. If a driver or a team disagrees with a penalty, they can file an appeal and it will be reviewed by an independent panel. For example, in 2021 F1 season finale, Mercedes challenged a controversial ruling about the race restart, but because of the FIA structure system, their appeal was reviewed professionally and transparently. Fair competition is important in any sports, and that's where anti-doping policies come in. But how do esports and Formula One handle drug testing and performance-enhancing substances? In esports, drug testing is not consistent across tournaments. While some major events like those run by ESL do test for drugs, many others do not have any formal anti-doping regulations. The biggest concern in esports is stimulants like adrenaline, which enhances focus and reaction times. These substances are commonly used, especially in high pressure competitions, but testing is rare and enforcement is weak. Because esport competitions happen online and across different countries, it's hard to implement global doping regulations. Formula One follows strict World Anti Doping Agencies, also called as WADA, regulations. Just like other professional sports, drivers are randomly tested throughout the season, and any banned substances found in the system can lead to several penalties. Even though F1 is more about skill and endurance rather than physical strength, the FIA still enforces anti-doping measures to maintain integrity. Unlike esports, where similants are concerned, F1 doping cases are rare but still taken very seriously. Both esports and Formula One rely heavily on sponsorships for revenue, but the way the sponsorship deals are handled is very different between these two industries. In esports, sponsorship deals are mostly controlled by teams, tournament organization, and public game publishers. Players can sign their own sponsorships, but they are often restricted by the team contracts or tournament rules. For example, a player signed with a team sponsored by Razer might not be allowed to promote Logitech projects. Additionally, game publishers control broadcasting rights, so tournament streamers and revenues are heavily influenced by the publisher policies. This means players have limited freedom to monetize the personal brand. Formula One teams operate differently. Each team negotiates multi-million dollar sponsorship deals with major brands like Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. Drivers can also sign up their own personal sponsorships separate from the team deals. However, FOM, also called as Formula One Management, controls broadcasting rights, meaning F1 footages cannot be used freely by the teams or drivers. Despite these restrictions, F1 structures sponsorship model allow both teams and drivers to generate significant revenue. In conclusion, while esports continues to grow at a rapid pace, its legal framework remains fragmented and inconsistent. Compared to F1, which operates under a centralized governing body with structured contracts, clear dispute resolution mechanisms, and strong commercial rights, esports still faces challenges in players' protection, sponsorships, and governance. To create a more sustainable and fair industry, esports must move towards standardized contracts, a centralized regulatory system, and a structured dispute resolution process, granting players more control over their branding and sponsorships, enforcing stronger anti-doping policies, and implementing a global attribution system can improve the fairness and professionalism in the industry. Ultimately, by learning from F1's structured approach, esports can transition into a more regulated, transparent, and financially stable competitive industry. As esports continues to evolve, adopting these best practices will help protect players, improve governance, and enhance the ability of the sport. That brings us to the end of our presentation. Before we wrap up, here are the sources that helped me shape this analysis. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to ask. Thank you for listening, and I hope this presentation gave you valuable insights into how esports can learn from legal structure of Formula One. Thank you, guys.